It's the big ball in the sky we can actually look at without going blind. We all witness its majesty every night unless there's a lunar eclipse or it's cloudy. I'm talking about the moon. Hey, what's up, it's Wellboy, and for this video I'd like to showcase all the different ways the moon is used in media. That is to say movies, animation, video games, and traditional art. Before we go into the symbolism of any given symbol, we must first see how it functions for us in everyday life. The moon is essentially a giant rock, a celestial body, or as some people would like to see it, a land yet to be colonized. The moon does many things for us that we tend to take for granted, such as lighting the night sky. If we didn't have the moon at night, it would be totally dark and living creatures would not be able to function nocturnally. You might think, well, we could just light everything artificially, but I ask you, how would we get to where we are today as a technological society if we couldn't see at night clear enough to bang two rocks together and create fire? I mean, I suppose we could start a campfire during the day, or lightning could strike a tree and then we'd have fire at night. But then what would be the use if no other creatures are awake at that time? And would our evolution even allow us to be awake past sunset, or would every living thing fall into a coma once it got dark? Our body already commands us to sleep 8 hours within every 24 hours, so what's another arbitrary command like knock out immediately when the sun goes down? But let's leave these ponderings to the evolutionary theorists. Another thing that the moon does for us that we don't really think about is that it makes waves in the oceans. Its gravity is able to tug at the oceans as it moves past, stretching out all water on Earth. We call the part that the moon is gripping high tide, and the part that has been stretched thin low tide. It's the agitation of Earth's large bodies of water that create the waves we love to look at, listen to, and surf on. These waves are what got a bunch of primordial oozes mingling with each other in tide pools, then whose proteins formed into structures of greater and greater complexity until we found ourselves as the big-brained apes we are today. This leads us into the first symbolic use of the moon, which is as a feminine icon. It is soft, gentle, and comforting, unlike its heavenly counterpart, the sun, who is callous and uncaring in the way it interacts with the earth. Its monthly phases also sync up well with a monthly menstruation cycle, which led to a bunch of strange and bizarre beliefs that had to do with women's behavior in relationship to the moon. Due to the moon's association with all things nighttime, it has been a mascot for all things spooky and mysterious. If you look at any depiction of a creature of the night, you'll more often than not see a big old moon in the background. Werewolves, vampires, owls, and aliens all go well with moon imagery. In fact, the word lunatic is directly referring to the moon. But despite the fact that the moon is always seen with these degenerates, the moon itself isn't evil. The moon's light doesn't burn. In fact, it guides the way through the darkness and illuminates the path, allowing many creatures to find their way around at night. That is, if they are able to escape all the LED light pollution that humans dissipate into their environments. So what does the moon's effect on living beings say about it? Well, the moon is, to put it plainly, extremely but still subtly influential, from the way bugs use it as flight direction during the night, and to how humans used it as a goal during the space race to show the world how far we've come technologically speaking. The moon's symbolic role is primarily as a guide. The way we can use the moon in our art is similar to how we use the sun, but in a slightly different way. The moon lights the way, not as strongly as the sun, but it does when we need it the most, in the darkness. You can use the moon as a symbol for hope, for steady guidance, or for longing. One example of the moon in our pop culture is the first Wallace and Gromit movie where they go to the moon. The movie starts with Wallace running completely out of cheese because he only had a single plate of it, so his goal becomes to get more cheese. Well, where does cheese come from? That's right, the moon. So in the story, much like the 1960s space race, the moon literally represents this goal they have, and in order to get what they want, they need to construct a ship and make the harrowing journey of flying all the way to the moon. But the moon doesn't just have to be used in art purely as a satellite. The moon also has different phases, each representing a state of change. The Twilight book series famously used moon associations as titles to reflect where the story was thematically. Although Stephanie Meyer admits her agent got her to change the name from the original Forks title to Twilight, she did go on to say the sequel titles were a better fit. Going back further into antiquity, the moon was seen as a wise ruler. In Egypt, the god of the moon Thoth presided over physical and moral law. Not only that, he was in charge of deciding where heaven, earth, and the stars would be located. The Greeks ran with this idea and simply made Thoth the god of every branch of knowledge, human or divine. So he wasn't just a STEM major, he knew everything about astrology and numerology as well. So a good way to use the moon would be as a light that guides the way. Maybe you depict your subject as sad or lost, but have the moon prominently within the scene shining on them to symbolize hope. Maybe you could have your subject looking into a reflective pool, and suddenly the clouds part and the moon is revealed. This would communicate to the viewer that a realization has occurred. You could also use moon motifs to telegraph the mysteriousness of a certain person or faction. What are some other ways you could use the moon in your art or stories? Did I miss anything obvious? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, check out this other one I did about sun symbolism.